In the fertile heartlands of America's Midwest, the cities rise like concrete silhouettes against endless expanses of golden grain. It was here, in the cradle of Omaha, Nebraska, that the tale of Malcolm Little began on May 19, 1925. Born to Earl, whose veins ran with the red dust of Georgia, and Louise of Grenadian descent, Malcolm's flame was kindled. His father, a preacher and laborer, bore life's burdens with a faith hard as iron, while his mother stood as his unyielding companion. Together, they planted the saplings of a family in soil, earnestly seeking the sunshine of equity. As young Malcolm grew, his home hummed with the fervor of black pride and autonomy, heirs to Marcus Garvey's grand vision. Earl and Louise, faithful Garveyites, wove a rich tapestry of self-respect and kinship into the fabric of their children's being. But within Malcolm's growing mind wrestled conflicting images, tales of black self-determination, laced with biblical narratives featuring a savior whose skin did not mirror his own. But shadows stretched from the south. As the Klan's hatred took root in heartlands, they presumed sanctified by their bigotry. Death threats inked in fire forced young Malcolm's family to flee, time and again, in search of sanctuary. Lansing, Michigan, offered but a fleeting respite, an austere refuge where Earl's voice rang out undimmed, kindling hope amidst a frigid isolation, desperate for warmth. Fire bore down upon them in 1929, reducing their home to embers under watchful, malicious gazes. From the smoke and ruin arose Earl's defiance, piecing together shelter from adversity, a fortress of conviction amid chaos. Herein Malcolm grew, nurtured by domestic strife, the dissonance between Earl's rigid doctrine and Louise's wearied sighs, sung as disparate lullabies to a boy on the cusp of tumult. A grotesque injustice befell them when Earl's lifeless form was found, a casualty disfigured beneath a streetcar, the Klan's signature etched into the tragedy of his demise as 6-year-old Malcolm's world darkened. Poverty bit at their heels, as scorn from the world outside compressed their reality. His bright intellect smothered beneath the oppressive gloom of racism, suffocating his childhood's potential. As Louise's strength waned under mental anguish's insidious approach, Malcolm's world fragmented further. In his shattered surroundings, he still caught glimmers of promise. Ascension to class president bore witness to his subdued gifts. Yet instability remained his family's unsung hymn. Foster homes shuffled him between realms of acceptance and mere tolerance, a life fractured but ablaze with latent possibility. To the sultry sounds of jazz and a kaleidoscope of city lights, Malcolm Little ventured forth. In the heart of Boston, where freedom whispered amid the cobbled streets, the ghost of his past found solace. Ella, his half-sister, beckoned him into this bold new world, a mosaic of black splendor and unbridled potential. Here stood Malcolm, on the cusp of transformation, where the ballrooms and social clubs coursed with life's untamed rhythms. Shackles of old skin fell away as Malcolm Little dove headlong into ostentation. The zoot suit became his armor, and jazz his heartbeat. He silenced the doubts with potions, lye and pomade, sculpting himself an avatar of escape. On those polished floors, he whirled, a dervish spinning ever faster, chasing not just applause, but the exorcism of foregone yesterdays. Yet the glitter of the ballroom betrayed a saga of struggle. The masquerade only skin deep. With each dawn, Malcolm bowed to necessity, toiling under the weight of an unforgiving world. The steel artery connecting Boston to Harlem carried him closer to its underworld pulse, a life blood rich with jazz but poisoned by silent dealings and shadow trades. In Harlem's embrace, Malcolm X found refuge, an architect crafting havens for secret sins. He peddled darkness to keep demons at bay, Narcotics numbed him. A maestro of the night, he composed symphonies of mischief, notes inscribed in blotters, music that resonated hollow against the drums of a distant war. As December's chill heralded endings, Malcolm X danced with hubris, burglary his reckless partner. It was not out of necessity but thrill, the intoxicating rush of power, control. His fall was swift, when a mundane pawnshop resurrected ghosts, justice's cold grasp ensnaring him in its iron clasp, dragging him beast-like toward retribution's cage. Iron bars aspire to capture more than flesh. They long to shackle spirits. Yet within these confines, transformation brewed, a mind unfurling like wings within a cocoon. Though the cell sought silence, faith spilled through cracks. The words of Elijah Muhammad, siphoning through concrete to water the seedling of change. A new dawn approached, and from the chrysalis of self-reflection, Malcolm X prepared to emerge reborn. In the damp darkness of a cell grew a yearning, like a seed seeking sun. He was drawn toward a brotherhood that promised transcendence. Letters, like lifelines from the outside, carried sage whispers from his brother Reginald. Eschew the bindings of your past life, they urged. Lay down the smokescreen of vices and rise in the clarity of faith. With palpable hunger, Malcolm plunged into the teachings of the Nation of Islam, absorbing the words that felt like water for an asphyxiated soul. Each enduring principle resonated with him, strummed by his own probing intellect. A journey toward divine understanding dawned, with Malcolm ready to shoulder its sanctity. Fervent missives were dispatched bound for Chicago. Elijah Muhammad's wisdom beckoned like a lighthouse for Malcolm's storm-tossed soul. It was a pilgrimage in ink and paper, a seeking soul yearning for enlightenment amid the cacophony of a world embroiled in war. In late night's quietude, within the confines of his cell, Malcolm traced paths towards inner peace, unmarred by the noise of conflict echoing across distant oceans. His connection with Elijah Muhammad anchored him. Each response fortified the burgeoning vision of himself, a man who walked a road paved by introspection and redemptive spirituality. He stood resilient against the coming trials, prepared to shoulder this creed. But even as the cocoon of his faith sheltered his growth, it could not hide him from prying eyes. The G-men inked interest in their ledgers as his newfound candor captivated their suspicion. Boldly he dispatched letters to high seats, even that of President Truman himself, his pen charged with opposition to war's bloodletting. A written rebellion drawing red flags upon him as though he were tinged with communist sympathies. Yet this was but a footnote in an unyielding cadence, the eyes of watchful guardians marking time until his release. Unaware, they surveilled not a culprit, but a chrysalis. In every signature upon off-white prison paper, the X stood defiant. It was an unshakable rebuke to a legacy not chosen, but imposed. Each letter he addressed to Elijah Muhammad chiseled away at his previous incarnation, a relinquishment not just of name, but of chains unseen and burdens borne. Beckoned by thought's gravity, he anchored himself in a deepening wakefulness that could transform fetters into understanding, scars into wisdom, and cast-off skin into bold rebirth. When dawn broke on August 1952, it illumined not only the brick and mortar that confined him, but also painted hope on a path forward from incarceration's shadows. Unbound was a man who had forged an intellect sharp as Damascus steel from the mine's ore, who had stared into the void of his days and found not despair, but unyielding purpose, a purpose annealed in fire and quenched in faith's waters. The gate clanged its finality behind him as he stepped forward into morning's embrace, a landscape that had awaited his steps while he was molded by trial into tenacity's emblem. Here upon this threshold stood Malcolm X, a name etched in conviction's ink across the scroll of coming times, a man primed to etch his mark deep into the bedrock of a nation's conscience. There he stood unflinching, amid winds that promised storms and tides that whispered tales of battle. And with a horizon ablaze before him, on shores yearning for lighthouses, it was here that legacy took its roots, not at journey's end, but at its fervent, fiery onset.